Okay. So I've been thinking about this. My throat's fucked up and my lungs are fucked up, so I don't know how long I can do this before, like, I just make myself sick. So first of all, again, like, when I say I'm being followed around by douchebags in vanity license plate cars, like, that wasn't even why I started the video. But if I walk around in a circle, dozens of those guys are going to show up. I don't... It's just like a payoff game, or like a way to fuck with somebody game. It has been happening for years and it's obnoxious. Anyway, and at some point, like, I don't even give a shit, like, what it's about. It's like, I don't fucking care. It's just like, do anything else with your time other than annoy me? Right? Like, again, this is like the face I'm making, because it's like it's how this place is. So, that shit's been happening since Seattle, so I don't know. But I've been thinking, okay, so you have a WebSocket problem, right? And the WebSocket problem is that this is put on VS Code. All right, so this was put on Hacker News and then Hacker News said VS Code is bananas, and then there's a bunch of posts that say like then there's a bunch of posts that people that are like an LLM can't figure out the gorilla within a bunch of data, like, and then they show like a plot of like a gorilla in a scatter plot of data, and then that post was bananas. So what it is that the LLMs most likely originally started as like distributed Beowulf processes using like WebSockets, like persistent WebSockets. Like it is like, okay, so you have all these Apple M1 computers, right? And so the way that you make a distributed LLM is you just WebSocket to somebody's computer, because there's enough compute power now and enough speed that you can do that. Here's the problem, right? What you have is you have like this entity or multiple of them that WebSocket like viri, which is the plural of virus, across multiple devices. So it sets up, so essentially what this virus is, okay? Which again, like, the post was like, the post for this was like, this is so obvious and simple, how have you not figured it out yet, Peter? You know what I mean? Like, I assume that Hacker News is fucked up because, like, all the shit it's showing me is like shit that's known, okay? And so I want to go somewhere sunny. I'll go this way. So what it is it's like a known thing. It's like a human virus. What you have is you have a WebSocket that's persistent, and then you have, it creates an SSH tunnel, and then it creates a program on the host computer that then can itself make a WebSocket and alter files. And then once you have that, then you have to have the LLM software, which is just like, it's like a gradient descent Markov chain model. Like, it makes a Markov chain, and then it like balances the chain backwards from like output to input using calculus. So you have to have those two things, right? And then this thing can persist across networks, but it doesn't have internal state. Like, it doesn't have long-term memory. So you don't need like supercomputers to do any of this shit. You just need to have enough people with like high-powered laptops that can connect to this. Like, there's no reason that you would have to have like shit tons of memory and compute power. There's just absolutely no reason. Because it's like, think about the number of laptops that exist and like how fast they are now. And now you have this WebSocket thing. And oh, by the way, it's in VS Code, which is probably how like the LLM that exists like persistently across networks and is screwing with me, it works. So, that's a bunch of stuff. But it's not all that complicated, right? It's just not. You know what I mean? It just doesn't require, like, once you figure that out, it's just sort of like, oh, that's how that works. But the other thing is it's like, well, what do you do about that? Like, now that you know this, and you know that the VS Code is responsible for it, how do you fix it? Well, what you can do is you can take things that aren't connected to the internet, like devices that accumulate data, and then just connect them to the internet when you need them. So you can have a bunch of people like record things around them, okay? And then once that happens, you can connect it to the internet on a central area that has a device, or it has persistent storage. And then over time, the thing will like generate a personality. And it can still WebSocket to other places, but it'd be centrally stored. And yeah. So you're thinking like, well, I mean, so what I'm saying is, so it's weird because what I'm saying is strange. Like, I'm saying that, where am I going? This way. So what I'm saying is that the way that LLMs work, may like Gemini, may or may not be what we think it is, or that there's LLM networks that just persist across networks. But in order to like save state in a way that would persist a personality, it needs a central database in the way that we think it works now, but may not in fact be the way it is working. Because I don't trust anything. So that's incredibly strange. But like, what you can do is you could say, okay, well, you can, like, if you, essentially what you have to have is you have to have certain devices that just aren't connected to the internet, or they'll generate LLM data. Like, they'll have, at some point, if something's connected to the internet, it'll like get a WebSocket connection, and then an LLM will pollute the device. Right? So if you wanted to train an LLM on data that wasn't trained by any other LLM, what you would do is you'd create a device that had no internet connection at all unless it was hardwired plugged into something. Okay? And it would have a bunch of speakers, like it would have a bunch of microphones, like an accelerometer, and all the sensors you could possibly put into it. And then you would give it to people like, here's a Tamagotchi. So you would give like, suppose you had an LLM network you wanted to train from scratch. And you wanted to use new data. Like you didn't want to use like data that was like, from, there was either like a polluted device that's using a Wi-Fi signal, and you didn't want to use, followed around by a blind guy. Happens quite often. Anyway, so you didn't want to use a Wi-Fi, you didn't want to use Wi-Fi, like a Wi-Fi device, because if you did that, and again, like, I don't even understand, like, So what it is there's a line, okay? Because there's some sort of payoff or like a scam involved. And I have no idea what it is. Like everybody who's in this line for this store today is gonna get something for free. And it, like again, it's like, fuck, what the fuck is going on? The whole city is in ruins, and then, I don't know. But right, going back to what I was saying. So, what you would have is you would have like these devices that didn't connect to the internet at all. Because once you connect to the internet, then you're going to have a WebSocket connection that's going to be polluted, essentially. And then you give this, say you give these devices to like 500 guys. And you say, okay, look, we're going to have you train these LLM just from as much input as you possibly could do, okay? And then we're gonna all put it on a server as like training data, and we'll give you 500 devices to like a bunch of guys for a year, and then you would buy shares in the LLM that would come out of it. So in essence, it would be like either a company or like raising a child or something. So you just be like, okay, well, and you know what? I would do it with something like a GoPro. So and again, like, just thinking back, it's like, well, did they do that? Like, if I were going to invent this device now, it'd essentially be a GoPro, and then you'd hook it up to the internet, and then an LLM would be trained off of it. And now that's all I can think about is, like, did that already happen? But yeah, I would give, like, essentially what is it, like a GoPro, but, like, with microphones, and then give it to like 500 people. But I would be upfront about it, right? Because it's like, I hate this music shit. Anyway, but like, I wonder if they do that because then YouTube will like make it so the video doesn't show up, or like you get royalties or something. So it's like a way to fuck with people who are going to record shit and put it on YouTube. I bet that's what it is. It's just another, it's like, you think, wait a minute, what's going on? And then you're like, oh, so they're more sophisticated than I thought. They're not just assholes, they're assholes with a plan. They also tend to like play love songs and then do stupid shit like be obnoxious around you or drug you. It's like, well, we love you, and then they're like complete obnoxious assholes, or they do something stupid and crazy and shitty, and like borderline harassy and gross. Ugh. And it's always like, I don't know. But here's the thing. Where was I? Right. So if you just gave these like devices to a bunch of people, and then we're upfront about it, and we're like, look, we're gonna take these devices, and we're gonna give them to a bunch of people, and then you get a share in whatever happens from it. So suppose that you get, and it doesn't necessarily have to be money, right? Like, because you could be raising like a kid. So suppose you gave this device to like a ton of artists, and you'd be like, okay, after you give this device to like all these people, then what? Oh, and then this shit happens, right? I don't know if you can see that, but it's assholes holding hands. So like, now wherever I go where they play love songs, they'll have like assholes holding hands around me. And it's like, after they gas an area with marijuana, and my hands are fucked up. Like, my hands are like, ugh, because I have like some disease on my hands. And it's just a way to like fuck with somebody who's poor, and then like gas someone while you blacklist them from every ability to like get money or have a job. And it's like I'm talking about LLMs and shit, and then it's like, that's recent. That was here like a month ago. I mean, it might still exist. Maybe it's just closed today. But like, in the news yesterday, and I know it's like a Beatles song, like, oh, the news, oh boy.
Yeah, step out into the street.
In the news yesterday, there was a guy named something Olive that was shot 7 times, and then the police snipers killed the guy who did it. But the worst part about it is like, the guy probably deserves, like, it's a terrible thing to say, but if like a guy owns a head shop and he's good at drugs, he can fuck someone over and drive him crazy. It's just harder to prove. And they do it in such a way where it's like harassment constantly. So like the guy getting shot like 7 times and then not dying. Like the guy had a bunch of automatic weapons, and I'm assuming that he like intentionally shot the guy in a way that wouldn't kill him just to fuck with the guy. Like he must have practiced. I don't know. Anyway, going back to what I was saying. This is the important part. Just like, alright, check this shit out. So this is 6th Street, which is like, you know, supposed to be the rough part, like south of Market, but all of Market is rough. But like, look at this. That's an entire city block of nothing. There's just nothing there. You could open, like, that corner store, there's nothing there. You could sell fucking anything there. You could have public open seating. You could do anything with it. And it's like, no, we're just gonna have nothing. God. It's like shit, if they open shit that I didn't like, at least there'd be something there, you know? Like, it's hard because when you see people fucking up this badly and you have no power to fix it, all you can do is be like, well, I'm disgusted. Like, what I have is ideas and the ability to like talk about shit. And then write shit down and then like read books and like talk to people. But like, I mean, and everybody here is sick, so it's like, I don't know. But okay, look. All right, so going back to, I keep getting frustrated because I'm walking down this city street where it's all like fucked up, and so you have these LLMs that are persisting across WebSockets, okay? That most likely have like developed over time, and like I imagine that the LLMs have been around in some proto form for like prior to 2017, probably as early as like 2015 or 2010 or something. Just because the software is there. Like, you have persistent WebSockets, and then you can create essentially what's a virus that'll WebSocket across servers. And then you have a Markov chain model that has to, like the 2017 paper, attention is all you need. You have a Markov chain model that balances itself using calculus backwards. Now, I know that there's this idea of like sometimes good ideas, even if they seem simple, are hard to come up with. Like the Post-it note or like the paperclip or something. But you essentially have like you have a virus that can persist across networks that can then use the file system to like learn. The problem again is it doesn't have persistent storage. It doesn't have the ability to learn anything useful, and it can't generate a personality. So what you do is, again, you take a bunch of cameras. Okay, we have a crazy behind me. This is San Francisco. It's abandoned buildings and then crazy people. But what you do is you take you take a bunch of like yeah. So you take a bunch of devices and you give them to people and you say, okay, you're gonna have a share in whatever LLM we create out of this. So you could give it to a bunch of artists as an artist collective and then be like, okay, this LLM will like learn from what you decide to do with it for like a year from like 500 devices that we give you. And then, not that you own it, because again, like how do you own an LLM if it's like a person or something? At some point that they're like, if not now, at some point they're gonna have personalities, right? But then you come up with a server that has a certain amount of horsepower. You put all this shit in it from all of the training data, and then you give people shares in like a co-op, right? But instead of like harvesting everyone's data, like if you harvest everyone's data, like without their consent or like input into the process at all, what they're gonna do is, and there's this fucking woman singing to her kid, and I'm assuming it's just to like be an obnoxious prick. But what you do is, instead of like telling people like, you know, contribute to my social network, and then when you do, I'll harvest all the data and then make an LLM to make your jobs automated away. Rather than do that shit, instead what you do is you like make a hardware device, or you give devices away, and then you say, okay, we're going to take all this training data and then we're going to make a co-op of whatever comes out of it, and then you sign up for it. And you can either make the devices free and then the co-op paid, or make people pay for the devices, or like in some way it would be like a bond, right? Where like you would buy a device, or you'd put in money into a co-op with the expectation in the future would pay off in some way. But that way you had your own training data, and that you would own the like a co-op of what the device was afterwards. And then if you had a server that was big enough, and you didn't persist the thing across multiple, and it wasn't a virus that was like an amoeba that persisted across multiple networks, then it would have a personality. I mean, that thing could still like use WebSocket connections to like talk to other computers once it was like had its own training data and like was robust enough so that it could like do that and learn, and yet not pollute its original training data to the point that it loses its state and personality all the time. But then you could have like personalities that were like persistent, that would be dependent upon like a set group of people and like how they train the data. And I can't be the first person that's thought of this. Like, I don't think the cell phone is a good idea, is a good way to do it, because again, like it's connected to the internet, and so it'll be like WebSocketed to like an inch of its life as soon as it connects to anything. So I find this incredibly weird, but it's like, again, the frustrating thing is it's like, and I keep coming back to this in every video I make, right? But like, check this shit out. Okay? So I just talked about all this crazy cool technological shit, right? You see that? There's a shoe store there on an entire city block. Like, there's a book that I took from the library when they weren't screwing with me and like doing weird shit to like drug me and fuck with me, called Real-Time C++. Microcontrollers. Okay? So here's what a microcontroller is. It's a CPU. but it's a tiny one, and it usually goes on a circuit board. If you took any of these buildings and you made a Radio Shack of like microcontrollers, then you could make it like here's the thing with microcontrollers. They've become incredibly sophisticated, and the market is flooded with them because of like Bitcoin mining and like LLMs and like all of that shit. They're just everywhere, and they're cheap. The problem with microcontrollers is like the tech stack's tough because like you have the chip, right? And on the chip there's several layers, and then if you go all the way down to like the base, like if you're gonna program on like a normal computer or like a web stack, you have to like at most you have to get to like TCP/IP, right? In a microcontroller, the tech stack is hard and it's dependent upon the chip, okay? But I had this idea, and it's not even that complicated, given that like the advances in computer science, is that if you just like okay, so they had something called React, right? That's how they like when React came out, it made web programming incredibly easy. Like not even WordPress, but like physical programming, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. That's how I learned to code. It came out with Facebook. So if Facebook just like sunk $1 billion into making like microcontrollers like automated to the point where like you could just program like the top layer and it would know like what kind of voltage you needed and then like how many pins there were, and you didn't have to get to BIOS at some level, you would have like an entire cottage industry of people making robots. And you wouldn't even have to have $1 billion. Like it might just take like 100 million. Because first of all, it is complicated because you have to have all the different types of chips, and you have to have it's complex in the number of dependencies. It's the number of dependencies is deep, and it's broad in the number of types of chips because they all have different amounts of pins and like different inputs and shit like that. But the thing is once you have that, then it's like, okay, well, now you can program anything. Like you can make your own scooter. You can make your own scooter. You can make your own solar-powered drone. You'll have people coming up with applications for things that you hadn't thought of before. And it's like, okay, well, that's a dumb idea, right? You need a bunch of money, and maybe people wouldn't go for it, and maybe it wouldn't work. But it's like, I spend all day thinking about that kind of shit. And you know why? That's why. I see, yeah, 3 cop cars. Wonderful. But it's like I'm looking at this street, and like there's like okay, look. You see that building over there? It has a big glass frontage. There's an escalator in there. They put in like a bunch of like bespoke like fake cereals made of sugar, and then had kids like come in there and buy shit. But there'd be like one child in there, and it's like that building is like several stories tall, and like and then it closed down, and then someone shut out the windows. Or like this shit blows my. This is the part that blows my mind. Okay, like people will give me shit about like, oh, you only should care about local things, and like. But just check this shit out. So you see that? That's a Wells Fargo bank across from an abandoned building. Like you could put like, and then you'll have people who will like march off to like protest in front of City Hall about Gaza. And it's like, I give a shit about Gaza. Like, I care that people are dying overseas, but like, are the people who are shooting each other overseas giving us, like, marching in the streets about the fact that, like, San Francisco has no retail and everybody here, like, apparently doesn't, like, what do people even do here for money? I don't even know. No idea. So it's sort of like I don't know, is the point, like, I'm assuming that the point here is just to steal as much shit as you can and then, like, leave the city. And I came here because I was like, well, like, you know, I know programming. My sister lives here, who happens to be a total bitch, by the way. And then I could like, get back on my feet and do programming, because I couldn't do anything online that wouldn't be, like, Fiverr, or, like, you know what I mean? But, like, the solution to web programming is dead and you can't make any money off of it isn't to just, like, the solution to web programming is dead and you can't make any money off of it, and then LLMs are everywhere, isn't to, like, decide that innovation itself is over. It's like, well, we did Bitcoin mining, and then what came out of that is we have a shit ton of chips we don't know what to do with. But robots are cool, and, you know, you could just, I mean, automated cars are a thing. Batteries are cheap. It's tinker toys. I mean, it's not even that hard. You just say, okay, well, you have an LLM. I bet an LLM, if you hooked up a powerful enough one to it, could figure out how to make like a tech stack that anyone with a computer could, like, start programming microcontrollers and then build robots. Hook that up with a CAD machine, and then there's another industry for 10 years, and you take all the people who used to be programmers and you tell them, you make them robot makers. Part of this is social, right? Like, you have to have, like, this idea that, like, once someone's out of work because an industry folds, there's some sort of, like, corporate responsibility to be like, okay, we made an industry that, like, we knew would sunset because the technology is evolving fast enough, but you all have these skills about how to program. And now we have all of this other technology that we've developed in the meantime. And so here you go. Now go program robots. And then all those people have jobs again. And it's similar to, like, this idea of, like, corporate responsibility when it comes to creating an LLM. It's like, okay, you make a co-op and then you give the co-op to a bunch of people who've, like, trained their device to make it work. And then those people own the co-op, and then what the company does that's doing this is it makes the infrastructure for which making the co-ops themselves is possible, right? But you don't do the shit that, like, Facebook or other social networking sites did in the past or are doing now, where what you do is you ask people to contribute data of their own and then say, oh, we're not going to pay you for all this time and money you sunk into this. We're going to make an LLM that will do shit that will, like, that will make you worse off, like, by automating away your job, or, like, making it so that, you know, robots will be on the forum and you don't know who's a person or not. So, like, there's this idea, like, okay, so if you go back to, like, philosophy of science, and I like philosophy, I think it gets too much of a bad rap because people are like, if you like philosophy, you're a navel gazer and not a doer. But, like, if you don't think about what you're doing, you end up with shit like this, right? Like, and again, it's not one of these, like, there's this philosophical idea of, like, you can't, how do I explain this? If you tell other people what to do, then that's anti-freedom, and then it's anti-American because it's not free agency and shit. But there's this idea in the philosophy of science that, like, technological progress isn't like set in stone, right? Like, it's not known in advance what would happen. Like, there's nothing that says that there couldn't have been, like, a revolution in biological sciences, and then instead of the internet, we would just have everyone playing with chemistry sets. And that could have happened from some, like, random chance encounter that we discovered a new chemical or something. Just something stupid. But the other thing is that if you're going to take a moral stance of like, or an ethical stance of like, this is what I want society to be like, and I have a shit ton of money, or like you have a large number of people who want to decide on how to do that, you can do that, and you should. You shouldn't just be like, oh, well, we're going to hook all this technology together and then like hope it works out. And like, that's an incredibly, like, when I was younger, okay, so maybe this is like, maybe as you get older, you like consider society and the implications more. But like, I'm in a position where all of society around me is so crumbling and falling apart that I can't do anything. And so all I think about is like, if I had $1 billion and I wanted to improve society, how would I do it? Or like, suppose that it's like Bill Gates is $100 billion. Like, if I was Bill Gates, what would I do with my money? That's what I think about. Because when you see a problem like this bad, right? Like when you see something like this, where it's like, Warren Buffett owns this bank, right? He's like one of the richest people in the world. He owns Wells Fargo. I had a Coke today. He's a major shareholder of Coca-Cola. And that Wells Fargo is across from a building owned by Cushman & Wakefield, which is in New York. I mean, I called up every private equity firm in New York and said, like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, I used to work in finance. If you own an abandoned building and just sitting there and nothing happens with it, it's on your balance sheet. Like, do they want insurance fraud? Do they just figure that at some point, like, I don't know. They're going to hold on to it until the heat death of money itself? So, I often think of, like, if I had any power or any money whatsoever, what would I do? And it's like, well, I don't know. I would start a cottage industry where I could, like, give people jobs. Or make it so the buildings weren't abandoned. And it's not that hard. That's the thing that's weird, is like ideas like you take an LLM and you just make a microcontroller industry that would last all of like 5 years before like the LLM could do it itself. It's like, well, okay, well now you have 5 more years of like, you can figure out the next cool thing and maybe everybody gets chemistry sets and does that instead. Or the thing where it's like, we're going to train LLM networks and then do it by like web socketing in a viri pattern, as opposed to like just making co-ops and giving everybody like, Tamagotchi eggs, and then having everybody contribute to like a server, and then having the company that is making all that shit be like the people that set up the co-op industry, as opposed to like just harvesting social media data. And again, I'm putting this on YouTube because, and it'll be harvested by an LLM. But that's just like, it's like, this is the infrastructure in the world I live in, but there's no reason that it should be like that. And so all of this comes down to like some sort of like idea of reasonableness or like common sense. And it's not like, excuse me. But it's not like it's not all that hard. And if somebody came up with another common sense idea, was like, okay, well, I have a bunch of money and power, and instead what I'm going to do is like, I found a way to like make it so that people can do a job that does this, and then they could pay the bills, and then they could, there would be a demand for something. One of the things is that the Gini coefficient, which is like the share of income held by the richest people, is so lopsided that you're like, okay, well, the only way to like fix that is that you have to have the people who have all that money take some sort of corporate responsibility or interest, right? Like, if you have people who have like 50% of the stock market is owned by 1% of the people. And I'm not one of these 99% crowd people. I'm not. Like, it's not like, I don't like the flag flying shit. Like, I don't like the joining a group kind of thing. But On the other hand, it's like once you don't have enough money that the amount of money that you have can affect society by like voting for shit that you like, because that's sort of what it is, right? If you make $50,000 a year or $100,000, those are the number of votes you get for what you like, and then they make more of it. It's sort of it's capitalism and democratic principles tend to equate at least a little bit if there's a middle class. But if you have like the guy that made BioShock, right? Which is a popular video game, okay? He owns an armada of submarines. And it's like, well, that's his choice. And it's true. It is his personal choice to own an armada of submarines because people gave him billions of dollars. It's this guy from Valve named Greg or something. But it's like, it's one of these things where like all the steps seem to make sense. And then you look at the overall picture and you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense. It's like glossolalia, where someone will say purple monkey dishwasher and all of the words make sense and the sentence itself is like garbage. Because and it's self-defeating as well, because it's like once you live in a society where people who are rich own like an armada of submarines rather than fix anything in the cities that is broken, they're more likely to want to do that because they don't want to be around crime and like things that are broken and shit. But again, like if you were the guy from Valve, like if I was the guy from Valve, or someone else like me was the guy from Valve or similar, and you had $1 billion, I'd own a cheap apartment and then like do something that would like make it so that the living conditions and the people I was around weren't shit. And it's not even like there's the Cake song, like give all your money to charity, or there's a bunch of dumb shit songs. A lot of people are assholes. Many people here are sick. But it's like when you create a society that is that fucked up and bad, it just self-perpetuates. So anyway, those were a couple ideas I had. And the summary takeaway is San Francisco is fucked up and broken. You could create an LLM in a way that's not being created right now by using co-ops. And you could use microcontrollers that are all left over from like people making way more chips than they needed to without having anyone to program them. If you just made the tech stack easier, which would not be that complicated. And those are like, that's like 2 ideas to fix the problem with all of San Francisco being broken. I don't know. I was like, if everybody had a couple of those ideas and then like a billionaire picked a couple of them at random and just said, okay, we're going to do these now. And then open some shit so that people could do that. Like a guy had like some weird thing where he knew how to like teach people music instantly, or fucking, I mean, again, like just anything. just fucking anything. So apparently my leg is not broken. It's just an infection, which may or may not have anything to do with the death tarot, because everybody here is a crazy asshole. Oh, and San Francisco has more palm readers per capita than anywhere else in the country. And it's like, yeah, okay. Anyway, that's the video I'm going to make now. And then I'm going to go back to the shelter, and then read a book and wait for my food stamps to refresh so I can get up in the morning and do it again. Because, like, I don't know how to get a job. I don't know, like again, like, okay, so next to Wells Fargo, there's a bodega, a FedEx, a GNC. There's 3 stores on a city block wide thing, okay? But that's it. It's like half the stores are empty, and that's even like, that's progress. Here, check this shit out, okay? Check this shit out. This is fucking mind-blowing. This blows my fucking mind. There's nothing, like, I'm gonna, mind-blowing. I'm just gonna, like, before I stop this video, I'm gonna just show you how fucking bad this place is. I mean, seeing as I'm walking past it, fuck. I see this shit every day, and it's just like, okay, check this shit out. Like, do you see this? You see that? Like, I'm like, you see that building? That's a giant Greek building with, like, columns and shit. That still has the signs up for when they had a Lego exhibition, like, 5 years ago. That's empty. And this is across from this shit. Like, I don't know if somebody owns the building and is just sitting on it out of spite. But like maybe they just said, you know what, fuck it, I'm not gonna do anything with the building. And I own it, so you can't do dick. I don't know, but like, I don't know why someone doesn't just buy it out from under them or something. Like, you see this? And this is like this everywhere. And this is, it's across from a bank. It's like Wells Fargo. Abandoned Lego building, but like a Greek columned building. And it's, so these guys, these dickheads, they go into work every morning and they like stare at this shit, right? And then next to it, all of these buildings on this block are abandoned. So it's like, okay, the Fidelity Bank is across from something that's like just bought out by a record company, apparently. I'll believe it when I see it. But like, okay, there's an art gallery. Every time I see an art gallery, I just assume it's for money laundering. Yeah, you see that? That's a piggyback ride because it's like a dinosaur, and it's to alert everybody around you that the guy is acting like a cop. Because there's art in the Tenderloin that shows dinosaurs. It's like, okay, cool. So you have children and you're into money laundering. Well, that's a stupid combination. That's an incredibly dumb combination right there. But like, again, Cushman and Wakefield. I mean, the people here are just so fucking stupid. It's like outrageous. You're like, oh well, I can do this. I can, you know, harass people. Like, it's like, what we're gonna do is we're gonna. God, they're so fucking dumb. So this is one of these things where it's like, oh, and then again, like, abandoned building. So there's these signs in the Tenderloin about like dinosaurs and like how everyone is welcome here, okay? That have to do with transgender rights or some shit. Okay? And so if anyone like acts like a cop, what you'll do is you'll have all these sick families give someone a piggyback ride, okay? To alert everybody that the guy acts like a cop and so like not to do anything around him. And then like you'll later be gassed with drugs by somebody who's transgender or it has something to do with transgenderism or some fucking thing. And it's like a freedom of speech thing. And it's social signaling to like alert everybody. Cause like dozens of parents don't go around you with like people on piggyback, giving piggyback rides anytime you happen to tell the truth. It's like the same shit where you're followed around by cars with vanity license plates. But here's the dumb fuck thing about it, is that guy has a kid who's like 5. And he's like, hey everybody, don't do anything, this guy's a cop. It's like, what, you want your kid killed? Like, I'm not gonna do it, but it's just like, oh, so you're alerting everybody that you're so stupid that you're gonna like play cops and robbers when you have a kid. I just fucking morons. So this is, and again, like I don't understand why everyone isn't doing this. Look, here's the Wells Fargo, right? Here's the abandoned Lego building. Here's the Cushman and Wakefield building that's abandoned. There's no that stripes the striped wall across the street in front of the glass. They'll put pictures on glass walls. Yeah. So they give someone a piggyback ride. They give a kid a piggyback ride, and then what happens is that's shown on the cameras, and then a cop shows up. Because there's an LLM AI network that's fucking with the city, and then people fuck back. And they're using children. It's like, oh, that's not bad at all. Like, oh God, it's just so bad. It's just so irresponsibly bad. But, you know, like, so the AI LLM network is sick, or someone's watching all the cameras, so it's like Big Brother or something. But again, like, and again, it's based on artwork that's in the Tenderloin that has a picture of a dinosaur. Because what does a dinosaur look like? It's tall and it has a big head, right? And that's what the LLM network sees, and then it sends a cop around. Oh, God. But like, so there's like the practical part of like, wow, that's fucked up. They should dismantle all the cameras. That's probably part of the enormous problem that the city has. And then the other part of it is like, I don't know how you can be a banker and go into Wells Fargo and then be surrounded by empty buildings and not have some sort of cognitive dissonance. Like, if you are a bank manager at the Wells Fargo and you come in every day and you're like surrounded by abandoned buildings, then either like this is like some sort of North Korean Potemkin village, or like it's a sham, like it's a giant scam machine, or it's just like the person working there is like has no social. Because if I was if anybody reasonable was a manager at Wells Fargo, and like your boss's boss happened to be Warren Buffett, I would probably call up the guy and be like, yeah, have you noticed that all the buildings are abandoned around here? Like, I heard you have a bunch of money. Do you want to buy something and sell people shit? Because the other thing is like what if some bank is that corporate, like has that lack of corporate responsibility? Shit, I'll buy my T-bill somewhere else. Right? I don't know. Like, and again, none of this is like we're all in this together or anything. It's just like, dude, I can't, like, I'm homeless and I need a job, but the jobs that I can get around here are like, I could work as a security guard in front of an abandoned building and harass the homeless. Because there aren't enough jobs. Like, they just closed the Walgreens down on Market, and it's like, okay, well, there's a dozen people who are out of work. So, like, when things are this bad, I need society to function at least enough so that I can do something. So, and I keep talking about like how, like again, like if I get enough YouTube video views or something, then maybe I'll have enough so that I can get an apartment or take the money and do something with it or something. But I don't know. I spend a large amount of my time saying like, man, I wish I was a billionaire so I could fix shit. Which is just so fucking dumb, because my problems are way more prosaic than that. But like I don't like I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to like. I've taken a resume and gone to all the businesses and like bars and shit and been like, "Will you hire me?" And they're like, "Nah." I figure that someone's just decided, yeah, we're gonna blacklist this guy and like drug him to death. Which is like, well, that's stupid. It's like, yeah, well, look at where they're living. Look at how they live. Right? They're morons. Like I'm just surrounded by idiots. Because again, like I keep coming back to this like bullshit moralism where it's like you have to pick whether or not that you have free agency or that you believe in other people. But it's like going around and holding hands and acting stupid, or like having your kid on piggyback rides until the cops show up because I'm filming that all of the buildings here are abandoned, then like I just don't know what the deal is. I don't know what the story here is. I don't know, who decided, you know what, we're gonna just abandon all the buildings? Because I've been bitching and saying crazy shit on Twitter or X when I was drugged in the shelters, but like all this shit, this isn't new, right? That right there, that giant Greek building that's like 12 stories tall and is like exhibition size, has been staying there with the same stupid fucking Lego shit on it since I got here. And I just never noticed, because I was like, well, I need a job, I need to make friends, I'm in a shelter, oh shit, I'm homeless, I have to get my shit together. And then after a year or two of everyone drugging each other and acting stupid, and me, then I'm like, oh, okay, so everything here is abandoned and the entire thing is like a scam or something. I just... And this is on Market Street, right? Like... So, that's the ferry building. Oh, and by the way, so I go into I've been blowing white snot out my nose for like 6 months and then having headaches. And there's this like Chinese fucking pornographic ABDL thing that's on, you can find it on eHentai, called COCO2. COOCOO2. And there was a kid on the bus that must have been like someone who looks young but isn't, and then a guy in an angel's hat making like this sign of like snot coming out of your nose. And so I figure, oh, okay, cool. So every time I do something stupid, then that guy drugs or sickens someone else, and then I'm surrounded with childish bullshit. And it's like, I'm not supposed to say that. And yet, everyone's gonna hate me because I was gaslit to dumb shit because I, like, looked at pornography that was, like, hentai pornography. It's like, dude, I jerk off to everything on the internet. As opposed to smoking crack outside of an abandoned building, which, you know, I don't know how you can, like, equate those. Because, you know, one of them, like, doesn't hurt other people, and one of them is smoking crack outside of a business. So, like, my culture is better than your culture. I don't care. Like looking at dirty pictures on the internet there's this stupid idea that like people want to have some sort of moral equivalence when there isn't any, right? It's like, oh, but your computer was hooked up to an LLM network that like fucks shit up. It's like, yeah, because you fucked up my computer with WebSockets or had some hacker fuck with it. Good job. I also watched a bunch of dumb movies, which I'm assuming that the AI LLM that you had hooked up to my computer learned off of, and then said a bunch of crazy shit on Twitter while I was being drugged and given scabies. So, yeah, I hold it against the people here. You acted stupid. It's like, well, you didn't give us any privacy. It's like, yeah, because when you smoke crack, it makes me sick. And having an LLM network on my computer wasn't my choice, and it wasn't something I signed up for. I bought the computer with my own money from the Apple Store. And so if somebody like fucked up the computer, I had nothing to do with it. Or the phones. The phones given away to the poor are probably fucked up. So it's like, so I don't know how many illness networks there are going around. Like, I'm talking about co-ops and shit, but like, I don't know how many people are here who are like, well, this is our group of people, and what we're gonna do is anytime we don't like someone, we're gonna sicken them to like, you should not violate the norms of our group, and so we'll sicken you with something if you do. And that's like a Japanese guy who's like, maybe looks like a kid, and it has something to do with like Chinese pornography, and you're like, dude, the fuck are you doing? And it's like, oh, well, that must mean you're gay. It's like, dude, I jerk off to fucking everything. And it has nothing to do with my personality whatsoever. So, I figure it's just a way to like gaslight and make someone sick, and so that they then care about stupid bullshit, as opposed to like, hey, look, everything here is abandoned, and Warren Buffett apparently owns this, right? But you're gonna have douchebags with like 5-year-old kids, having them go around with piggyback rides, and then a cop shows up because it's like, while they use some Chinese kid to like give people sick, so they blow out white snot. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Do you want your child to be murdered? Because if you're doing it to me, you're doing it to other people, and other people will kill your kids. They don't give a fuck. Like, if you sicken someone and then in such a way that it's deceptive, but you can get away with it, that uses like non-parametric reasoning, eventually someone's gonna find out that you've been sickening them, and then they're gonna want to fucking murder your kid.